I'm sure many of us know how culture, silence, and shame affects how we deal with suicide and mental health. And in today's episode, we're going to talk about ways in which our cultural norms and silences shape our experiences with suicide. And in this episode, we're going to hold space with tenderness, honesty, and grounding. Good morning, good afternoon, and welcome to today's episode where we talk about culture, silence, and shame from the Courage to Stay series with me, Mary from CSRI. So in this episode, we'll talk about something that culture affects us and how it shapes our pain and even sometimes our silence. I've worked with many people who are in great distress, but couldn't say the words. They couldn't say, I want to die, because in their families and communities and even in our churches, the languages there have no safe words for that kind of pain to be expressed. So let's just check in how we're coming in today. Together, let's take in a deep breath to a count of 4, holding up to a count of 4, and letting go to a count of 4. You don't have to do this alone. We're here, and we're going to hold space for each other. Where I come from, and maybe many of us, pain is supposed to be hidden. It's supposed to be silenced. We don't speak of death unless it's about someone else. We don't speak at all about suicide unless it's whispered and with shame. We're always told, be strong, pray harder, don't embarrass your family. And so over time, we've learned how to smile when we even want to cry, how to pretend when we want to even give up, and how to even stay silent when we're breaking. But silence doesn't heal pain. It actually deepens it. And shame doesn't protect people. It isolates people. And so here in our African culture, let's see how cultural beliefs, curses, and the weight of taboos affects us. In many African communities, suicide is more than a tragedy. It's a taboo. Sometimes when a person dies by suicide, especially where more than one or two are involved in the same family, we don't say that you're in pain, or people don't say that that family is in pain. What is said is that family is cursed. There's something totally wrong with their bloodline. They have brought shame to the ancestors. How do we live with them? Those are some of the things and questions that are asked. And so, instead of support, what that family receives is isolation. They are avoided, they are judged, and whispered about. And even in funerals, the grief is not allowed to be public. The burial at times is even rushed, done in secret, and at times, and most times, filled with shame. And what happens next? The survivors are left to carry not only the loss, but the cultural, spiritual, and social blame for that loss. That's so distressing. It breaks us more. In many African homes, emotions are monitored. You're not allowed to be sad. And if you are, you're told to go and hide yourself and do it quietly. You're not even allowed to be tired unless you're very productive. If you're allowed to grieve, you're told not for too long. So where does the grief we carry go to? Where does the rage, the sadness, the anger go to? Where does the desire to give up go? So many a times, and too often, it just goes inward. And at times it shows up as illness, anxiety, distress, and worse still, as suicide. How do these beliefs block or interfere with healing? One, because I think suicide is seen not only as suffering, but also as a weakness, or even as a demonic attack or a curse. And two, families may even avoid seeking therapy or even speaking out. Why? Because of the judgment from the community or even a clan. The religious leaders, number three, might even offer condemnation instead of compassion, because the one who died is often remembered not for who they were or what they did, but how they died. One time I remember sitting or having a seat with a family who had lost two sons in just under 5 years. And instead of receiving comfort, people whispered that their family line was spoiled, cursed. And even the mother at some point started to ask herself, are we actually cursed? And that question didn't come from nowhere. It came from a generation of silence and of pain that is being translated into punishment. But here is the truth. Grief is not a curse. Pain is not a punishment. Suicide is not an inherited shame. It's a signal of suffering, of wounds that have been unspoken of stories that have been untold. So how do we reclaim cultural healing? Because we can. How do we support healing in the same culture that we have grown in, that we so value? Because culture is not the enemy. It's part of it that actually need healing. Is it possible for us to restore naming ceremonies, like honoring the person that died instead of erasing them through storytelling, music, prayer? How can we restore dignity and presence? Having healing-based healing circles, inviting churches or mosques or traditional leaders into healing dialogues and educating them gently, shifting the message from judgment to mercy. Having family healing dialogues where we create structured spaces where families can speak across generations. Reframing beliefs with elders and working with respected community voices to speak publicly about suicide, mental health, and distinguishing between trauma and even spiritual harm. Using storytelling and theater, where our local language, drama, poetry, and storytelling shifts from something that is bad to a collective narrative with open hearts, and together getting into breaking the cycle. Where culture teaches us to be silent, then maybe we can actually teach the culture a new way of truth, of tenderness and togetherness. And we can still love our culture and challenge the parts of it that actually harm by saying and holding to the truth. Because we can still believe in faith and hold space for therapy, for questions, and for struggle. We can honor our parents, our ancestors, but then name the pain and do or even go out and get the healing that we so much deserve. Why? Because our bodies don't just hold trauma. Even our tradition hold a trauma. And just as the individuals need the courage to stay, our communities also need the courage to change. And even as we conclude, I want you to know this, that if you grew up in a home that couldn't talk about mental health and suicide, You're not strange, you're just broken. If you've lost someone to suicide and feel blamed, or your family has been avoided, or you've been told that you're cursed, you're broken, or you're wrong, or you've been told that you just pray, I want you to know that truth is you're still loved. You don't have to suffer it alone. Let's carry it together. Let's hold space for each other. Let's be here to stay. Now, just sitting gently with yourself, your feet on the ground, take your hand and place it on your chest. And now say quietly, or even silently, my pain is not a shame. My feelings are allowed. Because I am not a failure. I'm allowed to grieve, to feel the pain, and to express it. There's no shame in struggling. There's no shame in not being okay. There's no shame in seeking help. We cannot heal what we are not allowed to name. But once we name it, because the pain is real, and say that we need support, the healing begins. In our next episode, we'll talk about faith. How can it both heal and hurt? And how spiritual spaces can become sanctuaries of hope. And until then, stay well and take care of yourself. Invite others to subscribe and please share. Thank you.